Hello, I'm Michelle and I'm here today to teach you the NLS algorithm. I work in a London-based hospital. What we're going to do is we're going to do it in a two-stage approach. The first stage, I'm going to do it in real time, and the second stage, I'm going to break it down so you understand why I've done what I've done and the rationale for it. So I'm going to get straight into the first stage. So baby has just been born and placed in the resuscitator. I'm going to turn it on, turn the heater on and turn all of my oxygen and suction on. It's ready. So baby's just been born in poor condition, so I'm drying and stimulating. I'm also going to pull my buzzer and get some more help. Dry and stimulate front and back. Put the red towel in the red bin. Cover baby up. Keep it nice and warm. Keeping the chest exposed. As I've dry and stimulated, I've looked at colour and tone. They're blue and they're floppy. I can't see any respiratory effort. And as I'm listening, the heart rate is below 60. I'm going to reposition the head into a neutral position, and there's still no respiratory effort and nothing has changed. So I'm going to give my 5 inflation breaths on air at the moment. And I'll get that plugged in for when we might need it. But this is just on room air. Measure the mask, under the lip, over the nose. I'm going to give my 5 inflation breaths. 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5. So I did see chest rise. There's no spontaneous chest movement. Heart rate's still below 60. And there's no tone, and they're still quite blue. So I'm going to move on to my ventilation breaths for 30 seconds. 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm doing 15 ventilation breaths, which should take 30 seconds. 1 second on and 1 second off at this point. 15. Colour is still blue, they're still floppy, and their heart rate is still slow. So now I'm going to move on to starting compressions 3 to 1. Because I've now started compressions, I'm going to turn the oxygen up to 100%. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm going to reassess. Tone a little bit better. The colour has pinked up a little bit. They're making better respiratory effort, and their heart rate is about 100. So I'm going to pop their little SATS probe on, and I'm just going to monitor them for a little bit longer on the resuscitator, and then place them with mum for skin to skin. And then I'm going to document, debrief, and datex. So now we're going to break it down in stage 2 into more detail, and I'm going to explain why I've done what I've done and the rationale. There's also some differences for when another person arrives. We can use a 2-person technique with the bag valve mask and a 2-person technique with the chest compressions, which I will demonstrate in a short while. So what we did first, we came into the room and baby had been placed in the resuscitator. Your resuscitator checks would have already been done in the morning, but just double check that everything's working and let your team know if there are any problems. So power on, heat on. We want to get as much heat onto baby as we can. Getting all of your switches turned on and ready. You can have your bag valve mask as an emergency equipment at the end of the resuscitator, and you'll also have your T-piece, your Neopuff. We tend not to use these in an emergency as such, just because if the oxygen flow or the machine isn't working, this won't work, whereas the bag valve mask will work on room air just by squeezing. But I'll also show you that after as well. So, baby has just been born in poor condition, placed onto the resuscitator. Our first priority is to dry and stimulate. Babies come out, they're wet, they're cold, so we're going to do some really good vigorous drying, front and back, minding the head, being really gentle, making sure that all the area is as dry as we can possibly get. Ensure you just pop the towel in a place where it's not going to be a danger to someone, so underneath Resuscitate or in a bin. And then we're going to cover baby up to keep them nice and warm with that direct heat as well. If you've got a little bonnet or a little hat, you can put that on baby. Otherwise, just wrap their head with the towel, keeping just the chest exposed. We want to keep the chest exposed because we need to, one, use the stethoscope to listen for the heartbeat, and two, we want to be able to see if we can see that chest rise, which we might not be able to see as well if baby is covered. So we've dried and stimulated. We're now going to assess for colour, tone, breathing and heart rate. Heart rate using the stethoscope. So we're looking for tone and colour as we're drying and stimulating. Baby probably will be a dusky blue or a purpley colour, but is that colour picking up as we're drying baby? The tone, are they able to move any limbs? When we lift their arms, are they just flopping? Have they got any tone to show any signs of life? Are they breathing spontaneously by themselves? If there's no spontaneous breathing, we can put the head into a neutral position and open up that airway, and it might be that the baby takes a big gasp for themselves because their head might have been slumped forward. So we can put a neutral position to see if that helps. If baby doesn't spontaneously breathe, we're also still checking for heart rate. The heart rate should be at least above 60 beats a minute. Anything below that, we're thinking we need to go through the algorithm. So, first of all, in the lungs, you've got loads of fluid. The heart isn't going to start if there's no oxygen to start it. So this isn't a cardiac arrest, this is a newborn transition at birth. The baby needs to push all the fluid out of the lungs before the lungs can aerate with oxygen, before the heart can start beating for itself. The way I normally explain it is if you've put diesel into a petrol car, the car is not going to start. Unlike adults, when we start compressions straight away, there is no point starting compressions on a baby to start the heart when they've got no oxygen getting to it in the first place. So the first job is to push all the bad stuff out. So we do our inflation breaths. They're over 5 seconds. If the heart still hasn't restarted when we do that whole recheck, we're then going to give the oxygen to the heart. Pre-2015, we went straight from inflations to compressions, and then over years of guidance and practice and studies, we realised that actually the heart needs more oxygen in between the inflations and the compressions. So our second stage, I gave some ventilation breaths, which we're going to go through, to the baby, in hope that after we've pushed all the fluid out, then ventilations will give the lungs some oxygen to get to the heart, and we may not need to get to the compression stage. But I'm going to go through that with you now, team. So, baby's dried, stimulated, and nice and warm. I've checked the colour, the tone, and that they're not breathing. I'm now going to check their heart rate, and it's actually below 60. So I know I need to help baby at this point. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my equipment ready. I've got my bag valve mask. This is your bag. There's a little valve inside. So unless you squeeze the valve, we're not delivering any oxygen. And then the mask at the end. We're going to measure the size of the mask because you may get a large baby, you may get a preterm baby, so all the masks in your trolley will be different sizes. You want to measure it from under the lip to over the nose. You don't want to go over the eyes. We don't want to occlude the eyes, one, because it might not be very comfortable, but two, there's a nerve that runs behind the eyes, a vagal nerve, that might stimulate a bradycardia. If the infant's already got a slow heart rate, we don't want to make that worse. So measure up the mask under the lip and over the nose. Attach the mask onto the bag valve, off of the face, and then we're going to deliver 5 inflation breaths. So you're going to hold it in a CE grip. There's my C, and that's going to be my E. So we're going to hold the stem of the mask like that, place it onto the face, and hold the chin. Don't push up on the tongue because you're going to cause an obstruction. So we're just going to hold it on the face and just support the chin into that nice neutral position. So I'll position the mask, put some pressure onto the face, and pull that head into a neutral position. I'm just going to move this towel down a bit just for observation purposes for you guys to see. I'm going to squeeze the bag slowly to do my inflation breaths. Over 3 seconds. I'm going to do 5 breaths over 3 seconds. So you want to squeeze nice and slow. 3rd slow breath. Or you can count 2, 2, 2. Some people do 3, 3, 3. I like to say 1 slow breath. But you're going to give 5 of those. 5th slow breath. As we're giving the breaths, we're looking for this chest to rise. Because whilst the chest is rising, we're pushing all of that fluid out of the lungs. If the chest doesn't rise, we cannot move on from that stage. If the chest hasn't risen, there is fluid in that space. You can't make a helium balloon out of a water balloon. There is something in the space. So until the chest has risen, we cannot move on. If we moved on to ventilation breaths without that space moving, we're never going to push that fluid out. The idea is with the slow breaths, you're really slowly pushing the fluid out. By the 5th one, hopefully that fluid would have got to the edge and gone out. If we did see chest rise, which we did, we can move on to ventilation breaths. So we've pushed, imagine it's an engine of a car. We've pushed all the bad stuff out of the engine. Pre-2015, we used to then jump start the engine. Question, on your sofas, wherever you're watching this, would your car work just by siphoning the diesel out and then putting the foot on the accelerator? No, we need some good fuel. So we're going to give 15 ventilation breaths, put some good fuel in, and hopefully the heart, the engine will go, oh, yes, I've got enough now to work by myself, and we might not need to jump start it. So the ventilation, the mask is going to be in the same position, but they're going to be smaller, they're going to be shorter. Little squeezes, just enough to ventilate the lungs. We're not going to squeeze really, really hard. If you hear this in any of your breaths, it's too much. This pop-off valve basically restricts the amount of air going to the lungs so we don't cause any trauma. So just enough for that chest wall to rise. And we're going to give 15 of those. If you forget to count, it's 30 seconds in total. 15 breaths is 1 second on and 1 second off. So by the time you've got to 30 seconds, that will be your 15 breaths. 10, 11, looking for chest rise, looking for colour change, looking for any movement the whole time. 14 and 15. I've done an intervention. I'm going to recheck everything all again. I'm going to reassess the colour. Baby's still quite blue, still quite floppy. I'm going to recheck the heart rate and I'm going to check if they're doing any spontaneous breathing. Listening to the heart rate, and the heart rate is still below 60. It's not enough to perfuse all its vital organs in the brain. So I need to move on again. I've pushed the bad stuff out. I've put some good stuff in, some more oxygen, and now I'm going to pump that oxygen around. The ratio for the infant, because they've got a very small space to go from the heart to the lungs, so we've only got to give 3 compressions to that 1 breath. If I'm on my own still and help still hasn't arrived, I can rest the bag valve mask on my arm, like this, and deliver the breaths and the compressions. The compressions we're going to landmark 1 finger breadth just under the nipple line. As baby has just been born, you don't have to worry about taking off baby grows. So 1 breath, 3 compressions, 2, 3. And we're going to do this again for another 30-second cycle. If you forget how long 30 seconds has been, because you've not looked at your timer, once you've squeezed that bag 15 times, you've done a 30-second cycle. 1 breath and 3 compressions should only take 2 seconds in total. 13, 14, 15. After we've delivered the compressions, we're going to reassess all again. In this instance, we're going to say baby starts screaming and crying. So like I mentioned in the first stage, we're going to give baby to mum. If mum is well enough, skin on skin, debrief, document, and datex. If baby hadn't started automatically screaming or crying and the heart rate was still below 60, we're going to continue all of that again for another 30-second cycle until we do see signs of life. If we check our colour, our tone, our breathing, our heart rate, and our heart rate and the colour and tone is better and the heart rate's sitting above 60, but they're still not making respiratory effort like we'd want them to, we would continue just with the breathing for a 30-second cycle, just supporting their breathing until they're better. So, a few differences. Just to mention with the compressions, it's a third of the depth of the chest and it's a speed of 100 to 120. So it's nice and deep, a third, and quite quick. 3 breaths, 3 compressions, 1 breath. So some people when I do teaching in my hospital think it's too deep, think I'm being really harsh, thinking, no, we've got to be more gentle, it's really hard, they're only a baby, we shouldn't hurt them. Team at home, can you, wherever you are, the sofa, on the bus, sitting in the car on a long journey, wherever you are, can you hear me do this? Probably not. It's not a sound fault, you cannot hear it compared to this. The difference is I'm perfusing the organs, I'm perfusing this baby's brain. I'm not giving them a skin massage. It's a third of the depth of the baby's chest. It may seem brutal, it may seem really deep, but we have to get the depth to perfuse the organs, otherwise there's no point doing it. Another option in doing the compressions, once my more help arrives, my lovely assistant, they can be on the bag valve mask. If you stand there for me, and I can use my thumbs. Your thumbs are generally a lot stronger. They've got nice muscular structures here. So in the same place, just below the nipple line, you would use your thumbs to do the 3 compressions, and then the person at the head end would deliver the breaths. The other difference also with baby is once help arrives, the gold standard for neonates, paediatric, adults is always to have 2 hands on the mask, just in case you get a slight air leak with the 1-person technique. So if I hold the mask with 2 hands, my glamorous assistant here, if you just squeeze the bag once for me, lovely. And then someone at the bottom could use a 2-person technique with their thumbs to deliver the compressions. And you would continue until baby made signs of life. As I mentioned, if the baby doesn't automatically have a strong heart rate, please continue. And if their breathing isn't back to normal, we can just support their breathing with the oxygen. One thing I haven't mentioned, the 2021 guidelines have changed. Prior to that, we would always use the bag valve mask on air because this isn't a cardiac arrest. Therefore, it just needs the air to displace the fluid and then give the oxygen some air to support the brain. Now, 2021 guidelines have said, as soon as you start compressions, you then turn up your blender for the oxygen up to 100%. The reason why we do this is we know we've pushed the fluid out, we've given the lungs some air, and we've tried to give the heart the best opportunity to get that air circulated. If we then need to start compressions, we know at this point the infant might be becoming hypoxic. So we turn the blender up to 100% oxygen until they have signs of life, and then the neonatologist team, the team that come to support, can then blend that back down again. It's all in your algorithm. There will be a link available on the Resus Council. If you type in NLS Algorithm, it will all be there for your guidelines. Also good for your revalidation, guys. So I'm just going to give a little visual representation of what I'm trying to do when we're squeezing the bag for the inflation breaths compared to the ventilation breaths. So the purpose of the inflation breaths is we're trying to push that fluid out. Some midwives tend to do the inflation breaths far too quick. We have recorded the time length of some people's inflation breaths and they range between 1 to 2 seconds. We want them ideally between 2 to 3 seconds because the idea is you're pushing that fluid out of the lungs. If we go too quick, it's just going to keep coming back in. So imagine that I'm trying to get home. Imagine I'm the fluid in the lungs and this is what you want to do. This is what normally happens. People go too quick and it's 1 and then they let go for 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. So I'm the fluid trying to get out. But if you're squeezing quick and then letting go for 2, 3, all I'm doing is spending most of my time drawing back into the lungs. Or people do this. They'll go 1, 2, 3 and squeeze really quick. I'm not getting out the door. I am not leaving the building. We're going to be stuck on that stage 1 of the inflation breaths. What you want to do is this. Nice and slow. 1, 2, 3. Release. I'm going to try and come back in a little bit. 2, 2, 3. The fluid's going to try and draw back into the lungs. By the time I get to the 3rd or the 4th breath, I'm gone. Bye. I'm out of the lungs, and that's what we want. We want to get out of the lungs so then we can aerate the lungs with some oxygen. which are the shorter ones. 1 and 2 and 3, because we're just ventilating the lungs now. It's short, sharp bursts, but the inflations, until that chest has risen, we cannot move on, so they have to be slow to push the fluid out so we can move on to the next stage. The other piece of kit you've got is the TP, so it will be attached to your resuscitator, and it works similar to the bag valve mask, but with this one you attach the mask to the TP, put it on the baby's face, and then to occlude the hole, that is your breath. So we're not going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Again, like I've just mentioned, you want to push that fluid out. So you're going to hold it down for a full 3 seconds. I always teach the midwives that I teach to say 1 slow breath, release. 2 slow breaths, release. 3 slow breaths, release. 4 slow breaths, release. 5th slow breath, release. It slows people down. If I was to say 1 slow breath, 2 slow breath, it doesn't sound right. If someone's having a bit of a panic attack, you could tell them to take slow breaths, breathe in, and you calm your voice down, you slow down because you want them to slow down. Because it's really easy to say 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. If you're saying 1 slow breath, it gives you more time to slow it down. It gives you more ample time to get that chest to rise. If we're going too quick, we're not going to push that fluid out, like I mentioned, to be able to move on to those ventilations. And then when we're doing ventilation breaths, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and... But 1 second in, allow that gas to exchange, 1 second off. We don't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Allow the baby to breathe at a normal rate, what they normally would. So the normal neonatal breathing is 30 to 40, so if you make it easy, if you do 30, it's 1 second on, 1 second off. 1 second on, 1 second off. And you do that for 30 seconds or a total of 15 breaths, whether you use the TPs or you use the bag valve mask. And just one more thing from little baby here. Please like, please share and please subscribe, because then our little neonate here can get lots of views. Good luck for your OSCEs, everyone. And if there are any questions, as I mentioned, please do not hesitate to ask. Thanks.